Okay, we're here at the last bit of the urinary system. We have class today. What's happening for lab? Yeah, and it'll be great. Yes, I will send you an email as soon as I have them graded. Or finished grading. Yes. And that will all happen before 2. The lab exam opened at midnight, but like nobody wants to take it at midnight. It's open, it'll be open till 11:55. Yeah. It's open for 3 hours. I would be shocked if you spend 3 hours. I would be surprised if you spend an hour. Yeah. Thursday, we have a review. Do people have, like, topics they want specifically reviewed? Or should I just, like, make stuff up? Do you want to come with questions? Do you want me to be like, hey, these are things to remember? Like, what are people feeling?
We have a test next week for this class, or is it just the final?
So, excellent question. Thank you for asking. We have on Thursday, oh my goodness, that's in like 2 days. On Thursday, there's, okay, you need the backstory. The backstory is the last day of class, Tuesday, a week from today, you have the exam 3 over the last third of the class, right? I realize some people are leaving early to travel, do other things. So because of that, that exam is going to open Thursday. So it's going to open Thursday, it's going to close Tuesday. But Thursday we still have in-person class. Are we okay with how this works? Thursday we have in-person class, Tuesday is the exam, but you can take the exam anytime before Tuesday night. And then during finals, so then you take an exam 3 in lab, you take an exam 3 for lecture, you're feeling great about yourself, all goes well. During finals week, you have the lab presentation. It'll be great. I look forward to everybody's excellent projects. I have to have a final for you. I was told no uncertain terms, I have to have a final for you. So it's worth 30 points. It's cumulative, but like seriously, take it. It's during the scheduled final time, which is, I believe, that Tuesday. Okay, yeah, then it's a Thursday, yeah. It's whatever the scheduled time is, it opens up, it's a 30-point exam, you should take it. It's great, and that's it. Everyone's cool with how this works? Let's check. Yeah, it should be Thursday, 9:25. At what time? At your lecture time. Okay. I looked at every single time, I'm like, I don't know. Yep, right there. She's like, I know this. Okay, I know you do it. I feel like I have to check.
Well, the 4 years of being here, I should kind of have it down.
You have it down cold? Excellent. Okay, any questions about what's happening? Beautiful. Okay, we were here, right? All sorts of beautiful. The little nephron is working hard. It creeps me out when the mouse does that. But that's okay. The nephron's there. The blood gets filtered, so basically the plasma of the blood enters the kidney. Proteins and stuff in the blood stay in the blood. A bunch of plasma comes out. It's called filtrate. The nephron actively sucks a bunch of things out, right? Whether that's salt, whether that's some base. Some things come out passively, right? Water is going to follow salt. Some things put back in, things like potassium gets put back in, and goes to the nephron, convoluted tubules, loop. It goes into the collecting duct, and now as it's leaving the collecting duct, it's officially urine. Yeah? Okay, great. Anybody want to take a guess about how much urine the average adult is going to make in a day?
2 liters.
You're on it. I mean, depending on the size of you, but yeah. Like an adult male, about 2 liters isn't bad. The tinier you are, the less you'll make. But yeah, it varies wildly, right? But you should be having about a liter at least come out a day. Yeah? When the filtrate happens to come out, it's legitimately basically blood plasma, right? It's got some water, it's got some salt, it's got some sugar in it, it's got all sorts of random stuff. By the time it leaves, it needs to be very, very different from blood plasma. You want to have pulled back the good stuff and gotten rid of the nasty stuff. Yeah. The nitrogenous waste part, like that uric acid, urea and stuff, that's the main problem if you stop drinking water, right? You get dehydrated for whatever reason. The buildup of these nitrogen waste compounds is what's going to start to hurt you fast, right? Because you need them out of you. All right, I realized you had the lab, and I realized, okay, this one I feel dumb. Can I make this one? I feel kind of dumb about it. You know some of this. Urine's yellowish. Yeah, you've noticed. Okay. Though it can range from like clear to brown. If you eat tons of beets, it can go pink, and then you think you're like dying, and they're like, oh, right, I ate a lot of beets. Yeah? Okay. It's yellow because of the breakdown of hemoglobin, but meh. It's sterile-ish. People used to be like, urine sterile. Ish. Don't pee on jellyfish bites or stings. My brother, though, like when we were little kids, he got a jellyfish sting, and there was some discussion about whether or not peeing on it helped. Peeing on it does not help, apparently, according to actual rangers. Also, don't pee on wounds, which I realize sounds obvious, but people think it's sterile, and so they're like, well, I'll just, clean this off here. Also, while we're at survival tips, you've heard stories about people, like, they're out in the middle of Australia, tromping along. They're out of water and they drink their urine. Does this make things better or worse? Discuss. Yeah. So with one exception, if you just, yes, but yeah, you kind of end up making things worse. So you've got these nitrogen bits and other stuff. You got these nitrogen bits dissolved in water, and you need to dissolve them in water to be able to get them out of you. So if you've already gotten them out of you, which makes a good point, if you put them back in, your body's like, what the crap, right? I'm glad. Bless you. Hi. If you've just drunk a ton of water, and like your pee is basically clear, drinking it once, I'm not suggesting this, but drinking it once won't be a big deal. But like repeatedly doing it, that's a problem. Yeah. If you can filter it, that's not a problem. If you can filter it and basically just get the water back, a la International Space Station, you're cool. You just don't want the nitrogen stuff back in you. So yeah, I'm glad we learned things in this class. Don't drink your pee. Was this the class we were talking about don't be a cannibal? Maybe that was Gen Bio. Cannibalism is bad for you for health reasons. Also for like moral reasons, but like health reasons too. Don't be a cannibal. Yeah. Everyone saw them what urine looks like should be slightly acidic. If it's really acidic, it'll hurt. Okay, chunks that are in there. You've got sodium and potassium ions. Your kidneys are going to regulate your electrolyte balance. Like they do that. That's part of their job. They're trying to regulate water volume, electrolyte balance. They're also regulating acid base in the body. They're doing lots of things, not just getting rid of nitrogen. For all I act like it's getting rid of nitrogen. You've got some acidic things like urea, uric acid, creatine. Ammonia is basic. basic, right? Yeah, it's basic. Bicarbonate ions as well, which are going to help make it more basic. This helps. People have heard of urinary tract infections, right? Briefly, how come they happen? Both. Yes. Okay. So we'll get. Well, why not now? Back anywhere where the inside of you and the outside of you meet, the outside environment is hostile, right? Like bacteria can get in. And so if bacteria get into, say, the urinary tract, it can grow and it can just be doing great. That's a problem. It hurts, it makes people uncomfortable, it can cause other problems. And this will happen for a lot of reasons, but one of the things, as you point out, pH differences, some bacteria really like a certain pH. And so if suddenly your body, for whatever reason, there's been some change, your body changes its pH, bacteria that before weren't able to survive are now like, haha, I will move in, right? Which is why then it's suggested like, oh, well, if you've got urinary tract infection, if you just like eat lots of lemons, don't try to cure it this way, but it might help. You try and change the pH just enough to like kick him out. Antibiotics are probably your best bet, but yeah. So far, we're going to come back to urinary tract infections when we look at the anatomy of male and female urinary systems. But we're cool so far? Great. Things you're not supposed to have in urine, but they sometimes show up, but it's a problem. You should not have glucose in your urine. At all. Like ever. Glucose is being pulled back actively by the kidneys. Right? It's like, yoop, yoop, yoop. The reason glucose is going to be in the urine, if it is in the urine, is you have so much glucose in the blood that you're not able to pull it back fast enough before you get the filtrate through the system. Does that make sense? So like theoretically, if you're eating sugar by the spoonful, you just like, pour a bowl out and just like nom, nom, nom. You could get this done. It's hard though because usually your cells take up sugar really, really well. If your cells haven't taken up sugar really well, then it's still in the blood, then it's here, which is why with diabetes you notice it, right? Blood proteins should not be in here either, right? They should stay in the blood, that's what they're doing. Red blood cells are supposed to stay in the blood as well. Hemoglobin is supposed to stay in the blood. As hemoglobin breaks down into little chunks, yeah, you can get rid of it, but hemoglobin itself should not be in urine. Same with pus, that's a problem. Bunch of dead white blood cells, that shouldn't be there. Bile should not be there. Basically, it should be things that are in blood plasma, and then you put back anything you kind of like back into the body. Is that okay? Great. Urine. Did I miss any? Pus, bile, hemoglobin. Yeah, okay. The ureters are the tubes. So you've got your kidneys, which are like doing all the work. The kidneys are our filtering here. They're great. The ureters, they're a tube. They're, yeah. The renal pelvis, I don't have a picture. The renal pelvis where those collecting ducts drain into, once you leave the kidney, it's just now the ureters. It's the same plumbing system. They go in, they run into the bladder. Peristalsis is going to drive this as well. And people on the last quiz or exam or whatever did a great job with like peristalsis, this rhythmic movement, right? You can, if you want to, you can stand on your head and still urinate, right? It's not great. I know, right? Sorry, not that you feel like you've try it, but like you can. But okay, it's not entirely dumb. Like the take home is this is not gravity dependent, right? If it's gravity dependent, you'd have a problem if you were like an infant. You'd have to like pick up an infant to like have them drain. You don't need to do that, right? You can be out cold, you can be unconscious, and your body can still be like, you know what, we'll just have this happen. So far, so good. Gravity does help a little bit, kind of, sort of, but peristalsis is what's moving it forward. We're right here. We say they're coming in the back of the urinary bladder. So this whole system, we're looking at this in female, just because why not? A couple things to notice. We've got the urinary bladder. This might be obvious, but it's separate from the rectum. These aren't like connected. I realize people pee and poop at the same time often, but they're separate systems. Yeah? Okay. Also separate system. The uterus does not connect with the urinary bladder. Like they're next to each other, but they're not like connected tubing-wise. Pictures? Cool, we're fine with where everything is. So the urinary bladder, it's basically a bag, which is sort of intuitive, right? You're like, yep. And it's adjustable. It's got this funnel-like shape. Yeah, I think so. Okay, we've got the urinary bladder. Your ureters come into it, right? They feed into it. Two pipes dropping fluid in. There's only one exit. The urethra. And there's two different places where you can close that off. So you've got an internal sphincter up here, which can be closed, and you have an external sphincter, which you can also close. So it's like double gate system. Anybody here ever, like, I don't know, interact with a bunch of chickens or a bunch of goats or a bunch of anything that they move reasonably quickly and you've got a bunch of them in a pen? Yeah. Have you done that, like, double gate system, right? Where you open one gate, you go in, you close behind you, you open another gate, close behind you? People know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Same kind of general idea here. We'll get to that in a second. Am I missing anything? All right. Oh yeah. It's made of muscle mostly, right? It's the picture I think a lot of people have is like a balloon, and it kind of is like a balloon, but you also have a muscular layer there. In males, so this appears in females. In males, it's the same picture, except the size of things, the length of things are different. The prostate is going to surround, it's called the neck of the urinary bladder. So the urinary bladder, basically the same shape, size, picture, male and female, right? You've got your ureters coming in, you have your urethral exit, but that tubing is just longer, right? So you've got the prostate around there. The prostate's actually still internal. This surprises some people. And when we get to the reproductive system, the penis functions both in the urinary system and the reproductive system, but at different times. Yeah? Urine and sperm do not mix. They don't mix. There's like some very serious gates of like, nope, either one or the other. So just forward to spell misconceptions. Urine and sperm don't mix. Also, The urinary system in females has nothing to do with reproduction. Because sometimes people are like, I don't know. The vaginal opening is not the same opening as where you urinate from. You look at me like that? I speak from getting all sad about somebody's homework last year. You're like, no. Yeah, anyways. So far, so good? Okay. So we see the muscle layers. We're okay with that? There's several layers of them. I have notes. Oh yes. Yeah, muscular layer. Again, because the urinary bladder is one of those places where inside officially is open to outside, even though like it's hard to get to. You've got a mucosal lining. The walls are pretty thick, but they're folded, which means as it fills up, it can get bigger without like having to stretch like a balloon. So it can stretch, but for a while it can get bigger without increasing the pressure. It can't. Random guesses. I don't know why. There's no reason you should know this. About how much can a bladder hold? Depending on let's just go for like general adult. If presumably you're urinating about 1 to 2 liters a day, how much could your bladder hold? Don't push it, but how much? You know. It's adjustable. It's very, very adjustable. So if it's full, where you're like, you know what, I could pee maybe half a liter, right? You could, if you're pushing it, don't push it, hold about a liter. I know. Again, don't do that. You'll start to hurt. I have a video. Should we watch a video now about holding your pee? Yeah, great. That's just. Just like, let me get it. I'm trying really hard to make life slightly easier for our online friends. So I'm trying to play them at the same time. Oh, come on.
When you want to buy this place, but first you have to sell this place, Zillow Offers makes it easy. Get a no obligation.
Okay. Just for the record, I am not getting paid by TED Talk to like promote their videos. Cause I'm pretty sure this is like the 5th one I've showed you guys. But they're nice because they're like cartoony without being dumb. And it's tricky to find the nice balance sometimes.
It begins with a bit of discomfort and soon becomes a pressing sensation that's impossible to ignore. Finally, it's all you can think about, and out of sheer desperation, you go on a hunt for a bathroom until... Humans should urinate at least 4 to 6 times a day, but occasionally, the pressures of modern life forces us to clench and hold it in. How bad is this habit, and how long can our bodies withstand it? The answers lie in the workings of the bladder, an oval pouch that sits inside the pelvis. Surrounding this structure are several other organs that together make up the whole urinary system. 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, 2 urethral sphincters, and a urethra. Constantly trickling down from the kidneys is the yellowish liquid known as urine. The kidneys make urine from a mix of water and the body's waste products, funneling the unwanted fluid into two muscular tubes called ureters. These carry it downward into the hollow organ known as the bladder. This organ's muscular wall is made of tissue called detrusor muscle, which relaxes as the bladder fills, allowing it to inflate like a balloon. As the bladder gets full, the detrusor contracts. The internal urethral sphincter automatically and involuntarily opens, and the urine is released. Whooshing downwards, the fluid enters the urethra and stops short at the external urethral sphincter. This works like a tap. When you want to delay urinating, you keep the sphincter closed. When you want to release it, you can voluntarily open the floodgates. But how do you sense your bladder's fullness so you know when to pee? Inside the layers of detrusor muscles are millions of stretch receptors that get triggered as the bladder fills. They send signals along your nerves to the sacral region in your spinal cord. A reflex signal travels back to your bladder, making the detrusor muscle contract slightly and increasing the bladder's pressure so you're aware that it's filling up. Simultaneously, the internal urethral sphincter opens. This is called the micturition reflex. The brain can counter it if it's not a good time to urinate by sending another signal to contract the external urethral sphincter. With about 150 to 200 milliliters of urine inside of it, the bladder's muscular wall is stretched enough for you to sense that there's urine within. At about 400 to 500 milliliters, the pressure becomes uncomfortable. The bladder can go on stretching, but only to a point. Above 1,000 milliliters, it may burst. Most people would lose bladder control before this happens, but in very rare cases, such as when a person can't sense the need to urinate, the pouch can rupture painfully, requiring surgery to fix. But under normal circumstances, your decision to urinate stops the brain's signal to the external urethral sphincter, causing it to relax and the bladder to empty. The external urethral sphincter is one of the muscles of the pelvic floor, and it provides support to the urethra and bladder neck. It's lucky we have these pelvic floor muscles, because placing pressure on the system by coughing, sneezing, laughing, or jumping could cause bladder leakage. Instead, the pelvic floor muscles keep the region sealed until you're ready to go. But holding it in for too long, forcing out your urine too fast, or urinating without proper physical support may, over time, weaken or overwork that muscular sling. That can lead to an overactive pelvic floor, bladder pain, urgency, or urinary incontinence. So, in the interest of long-term health, it's not a great habit to hold your pee. But in the short term at least, your body and brain have got you covered, so you can conveniently choose your moment of sweet release.
There have been a few cases of people holding their pee long enough that their bladder has popped, but seriously, most people wet themselves before that happens. The system.
Now that we've
fails
helped
that
people
way.
customize and save with Liberty Mutual, we can finally do some beach reading.
Great. Questions or concerns? Today's class, this is true anytime. If you need to, excuse yourself and use the bathroom, feel free. Because I realize this one's, equivalent to, drip, drip, drip. You're like, oh, okay, now I have to go. And we'll get to it actually with urination. Because it's a reflex, you can have it, conditioned. You know how, Pavlov and his dogs, right? There's a reflex to, salivate at the smell of food, right? But you can condition that reflex so that every time there's a bell, you know food's coming, so you salivate at the bell, right? Well, since micturition, urination, is a reflex, you can override it, but it's a reflex, you can totally, on accident, classically condition yourself to that, which is why you're like, I don't have to pee, and then you walk into the bathroom, you're like, yep, yes I do. Does that make sense? Because you just end up associating those things. Yeah, we're right here. So this would be in male. The empty bladder is collapsed down. As it fills up, it expands up. Yeah. As far so good. We've had the tubes leading in here, which are called the ureters. The tube leading out is the urethra. In females, it's short, which is why, urinary tract infections are more problematic for females because the space bacteria has to go to get from outside, like, all the way in is short. Like, as the bacteria are going, they can get there faster. For males, for bacteria to come in, it has a longer way to go, and as you urinate, you can wash bacteria out often, which is why it's suggested, like, oh, you might have heard, like, after sex, people say you should pee. It's because, as interesting things happen, you can introduce bacteria into the system, right? So if you pee, you're pushing it back out, is the idea. So far, so good? So, it's, the urethra is this little tube. Again, it's got peristalsis happening. Females carrying urine, males can carry urine and sperm, but again, not at the same time. And really, that's all the tube does. It's a tube. The two different sphincters. The internal one is involuntary. You cannot control it. The external one is voluntary, and you can control it. Alright, so we've got internal sphincter here under brain reflexive control, the external one under voluntary control. Alright, urethra, right, 1 versus 8 inches. I should tell you words here. So, in males, there are different regions of the urethra. This is called the prostatic urethra, because there's a prostate around it. Then there's the membranous urethra, and then you've got the spongy urethra. It's spongy because there's erectile tissue around it. That's about all we have there. Yep. Okay. Any of these parts can get inflamed. If the urethra gets inflamed, it's urethritis. Cystitis is when the bladder gets inflamed or infected. That's a problem. And it's easy. The farther along the system, the easier it is for bacteria to cause a problem, right? So, like, the urethral opening to get bacteria in it is not a huge deal. The bladder to get bacteria and gunk in it, it's a bigger problem. If the inflammation goes all the way back up to the kidneys, that's a bigger problem. Is that fair? Alright, and this is just, we can see the liquid here, right? We've got kidneys, renal pelvises, the ureters, the urinary bladder. Alright, for the first time in forever, for the first time in forever, we might actually be, like, ahead of schedule. Okay. The urine exiting your body is called voiding or micturition, right? So micturition, you're emptying the bladder. Outside of anatomy, basically everybody calls, people call it peeing, but outside of anatomy, people call it voiding or urinating. In anatomy, it's called micturition more often. Incontinence is when you can't control this, right? Urinary retention is the opposite problem, where you can't empty the bladder. You want to, but for whatever reason, usually a nervous system one, the signals aren't being sent properly. So urinary retention is fairly rare. Well, complete urinary retention is rare. Some people can have a hard time completely emptying their bladder. They can't, like, squeeze it all out. But if the nervous system signals that respond to the stretch of the bladder don't notice that stretch, right? Just like you can have nerves anywhere that, like, aren't responding, then your body doesn't have that reflex to relax the internal urethral sphincter, so you retain urine. that's a problem. It's more normal to have incontinence, which is where the reflex part is fine, but the voluntary control is gone, or is not there. And like, you've seen small children, they don't have voluntary control over emptying their bladder. Like, they don't. Any guesses about when this comes online, typically? Before you answer that question, about when do most kids get potty trained? 2. It comes online about at 2. I mean, there's a range. For some kids, it comes online like 18 months. For some kids, it comes online about 3. But about 2 is when most people start to have voluntary control. And like, parents will notice because the kid will stop peeing while they're asleep, taking a nap. And they'll be like, oh, right, it's time for the potty chair, right? Have you heard people ever be like, oh, we potty trained our 6-month-old? You've heard that? Yeah, okay, I've heard, it's a thing. What they've actually done is they've conditioned their kid. You can do it. My sister did it with her kid. I don't have this kind of time in my life, but what they did, have you not heard? It's a thing. What they did was they'd like watch this little baby, and it looked like he's about to pee. They'd like hold him over the toilet and whistle. I kid you not. They'd whistle and he'd pee, and it got to the point that he'd pee at the whistle, right? Because it's just the reflex that's conditioned. So yeah, you can do that, and actually, a lot of countries that's actually what they do. There's like a, yep, we're just gonna, get this done. But regardless, the conscious voluntary control doesn't come on until later. Concerns, comments? Do it with your kid? The pros for it are like, well, I don't have to like, if you're using cloth diapers, I don't have to wash diapers, which I can understand that. The cons are like, oh, but it's one more thing to have to do, is the argument. But because this is a reflex, and the ability to stop it is a conscious thing, typically, even if there's like, even if you have brain damage or in a coma or some other thing where like you're mostly not under voluntary control, your body can still keep getting rid of waste. It's a pontine. It's a reflex in the pons, so you're probably fine. All right. In the last small portion of class, I guess half an hour, we're gonna talk about like keeping stuff balanced. So we're okay with the anatomy, right? So far, the chunks. Kidneys are trying to keep the blood okay, right? That's their goal. They're trying to keep the fluid right. They're trying to keep the electrolytes right. They're trying to keep the acid base right, and they're trying to get rid of the nitrogen stuff. But I talk about that too much. So these other 3 things are where we are next. Everybody is very soggy, I guess. Like, inside you've got a lot of water, right? You're supposed to. At different times and ages in your life, you're gonna have different amounts of water in you, typically. Adult females are less soggy inside. Males are gonna have more water. Babies are practically balloons. You're not supposed to give babies water to drink, like newborn infants, because they already have so much water in them. You can throw off the electrolyte balance. It's like never give like a newborn a bottle of water, unless you're acting under like proper medical advice. But the water levels get maintained by a whole bunch of different things. So far, so good? Okay. This is just a chart that's showing, I was going to put this in the lab, but I decided not to because, meh, you were doing other things too. You've got a lot of, this is a picture I can find. It's based on males. Females is going to be about the same, proportions, but not quite as much. You've got two other things. You've got the total amount of your body weight that's water, right? About 60% of your body weight, give or take. You've got a bunch of that that's water that's inside cells, right? So your cell has water in it, you have a bunch of cells. It's intracellular fluid. That's the biggest water component of your body, right? All these little bags of water you have floating around. You have plasma, like blood plasma, which is a bunch of water. And then you've got the interstitial fluid, which people forget sometimes. It's the fluid that's between cells. So you have a cell that's a bag of water. You have plasma that's in the blood. But the goo between cells, that's the interstitial fluid. And the interstitial fluid and the plasma together is the extracellular fluid, because it's the fluid that's outside of cells. Fair enough? You'll see these terms other places, other times, be like, oh yeah, the ECF is the extracellular fluid. But extra meaning outside, not like, we've got more of it. Great. So, water is going to follow solutes. And so the solutions of the body have ions and all sorts of stuff, right? They've got calcium, they've got potassium, they've got sodium. Things your body needs, and you need to regulate the amount, right? You're going to need calcium for muscles and bones. You're going to need salt for nervous responses, right? If you change the electrolyte balance in any of these different compartments, you can change all the others, right? So if for whatever reason your cells were to suddenly, well, let's see, if you were to put a whole bunch of salt in the blood, or a whole bunch of solutes in the blood, you draw water out of the rest of the body. Does that make sense? Right, because they're all connected. So with just the passive movement of water, you pull it out. Yeah? Okay. This is perhaps obvious, but if you want to stay, if the human is appropriately balanced with water, to keep that right, you need the same amount of water coming in as the water that is leaving you. Right? Help me out with how do you get water inside of you? I actually put it here. Okay, you get it from food or from fluids, and you make water when you do certain metabolic processes, right? So as you make ATP, you use oxygen from that you breathe with some hydrogen that you got from like a carbohydrate, and you make some water. That's not your main source of getting water. Most of it you're getting it from food and drink, right? You feel thirsty, you ingest water, things are great. Getting water in is pretty straightforward. How do you get water out of you? Sweat, yeah. Oh, I thought people might miss that one. So you've got sweat. Anything else?
Respiration.
Yeah, you breathe it off. Anything else? Urination. Yep. Oh yeah, we missed feces, but right, you're having. These are all averages, right? You're getting water in from food, drink, and then a little bit of metabolism. But you just make it yourself. Go you. Most of you're leaving with urine. You're sweating a fair bit. The lungs, you're breathing out a lot of moisture. This insensible loss is when you're losing water through your skin, but you don't notice the sweat. It's a slight difference. And then you also get a little bit out in the feces. Because I'm deeply committed to showing you YouTube videos, we're going to look at some hormone videos here. This one, though, is the last one we have in the whole semester, unless I think of a good one for the review. This one's short. It's about coffee and alcohol, but it's relevant to the hormones. Come on, computer. Come on, little computer, you can do it. I knew you could.
It's so easy to use and it's so sleek. The design is amazing. This is my favorite gift I've ever received.
Ever wonder why both coffee and alcohol have the unfortunate tendency to make you pee? Well, aside from the fact that you may have been binge drinking both of these substances, hopefully not at the same time, there are actually some simple biological processes at work when nature decides to call. Your pituitary gland, which resides at the base of the brain, controls the release of a hormone known as antidiuretic hormone, or ADH for short. ADH is secreted by the pituitary gland, enters the bloodstream, and is then carried to the kidney. The kidney, among other things, is responsible for monitoring how much water is in your body and whether or not you can afford to get rid of it. In times of dehydration, this ADH is responsible for retaining water in your body by inducing the production of aquaporins in the kidney. Aquaporins are proteins embedded in the kidney cell membrane that regulate the flow of water, in this case allowing water to be reabsorbed back into the body. So with less water, you get more ADH, which means greater production of aquaporins and more water reabsorbed. So instead of letting you pee it out, you keep it in. Think of it like a glass of water when you're really thirsty. The aquaporins act like a straw and allow for the water to flow back into your body. More straws equals more water reabsorbed. So what does ADH have to do with caffeine or alcohol? Well, both caffeine and alcohol inhibit the release of ADH by the pituitary gland, and as a result, the aquaporins are not created to reabsorb water, and the amount of water in your pee increases. This explains why once you've had your morning coffee or at least a couple beers on the patio, a pee break is usually soon to follow. In the case of alcohol, this inhibition of ADH unfortunately contributes to something known as a damn hangover. This also explains why urine can seem clear during consumption and look like Tropicana orange juice the next morning. Are you sure you want coffee, Frank? That's better.
Okay. I'm guessing you were sort of vaguely aware that coffee or alcohol made a difference with urinary. Okay. Okay, so stop. But that, as it's pointed out, it's under the control of hormones, right? Because, I mean, obviously, coffee and alcohol have water in them, right? But there's this hormone that's worried about how much water you're getting rid of. So the kidneys, left to their own devices, are going to just dump a ton of water, right? So the body is going to send signals to say, whoa, 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 pull back more. It's called antidiuretic hormone because it's antidiuretic. ADH, it's going to prevent water loss. As I pointed out, you put more aquaporins in so you can pull the water back into the body. There's the normal kind of diabetes that you hear about, diabetes mellitus. That's the sugar insulin problem. Diabetes insipidus has nothing to do with that, except the same pee-related part. Diabetes mellitus basically means sweet pea, right? Because you're peeing out sugar. Diabetes insipidus is when you're not either making or releasing antidiuretic hormone. So people are urinating all the time. They're making so much urine because they're not pulling the water back fast enough. So the solution for this is to just basically have a jug of Gatorade by you at all times. You need to keep the water back in, you need to get salt back in, because the problem is you're losing water and salt fast. Concerns about that? There are a couple other things. Another hormone, when we get to the endocrine system, we'll talk more about some of these hormones. Aldosterone is going to increase sodium reabsorption. When you move more salt back into the body, water follows. So pulling lots of salt back pulls water back as well. Yeah. There's So the body's regulating the water output with antidiuretic hormones, right? It's going to worry about aldosterone. It's also going to worry about blood pressure. So when do you want to keep more water in the body? If your blood pressure is high or if your blood pressure is low? When it's low, right? Because like obviously you need more fluid in you. This is the same reason why well, if your blood pressure gets low, you feel thirsty. Your body's like, hey, water over here. Also, if people lose blood for like an injury or surgery or something, they're really, really thirsty. Yeah. The way this works, did I put a picture? I did not put a picture. Let me get a good picture. I copy and paste this because my ability to spell juxtaglomerular apparatus is not great. Yeah. I think this is actually the picture from your book. No, I want the whole. There we go. Okay, we're looking at right here. So, all people, can you see that, hopefully? There's what's called the juxtaglomerular apparatus. That thing up there. In the renal tubules, right, you've got your renal corpuscle and then all the tubing, right, and nephron. As the tube moves back around, the renal tubules come back and they're physically close to the glomerulus. And the cells here notice low blood pressure. They notice low blood pressure and they series of events, but they're going to cause vasoconstriction. So low blood pressure is going to basically make the tube feeding into the kidneys to filter this smaller. So you're not going to pull as much filtrate out, right? When the system reads low blood pressure, it's like, well, make the hose smaller so we don't lose as much out, right? And then you end up with increased blood pressure volume because you just crunch your hose down smaller. Does that make sense? I think I say it better in slides. Yeah. We okay with that? Questions, comments? The summary is this. It's beautiful. That's so beautiful. Your body cares deeply, deeply, deeply about the balance of everything. So your blood pressure or volume, starts dropping. All those things are gonna go down, right? When that happens, you so your blood pressure drops. Your juxtaglomerular cells notice, and they're like, hey, we need to make this to cause vasoconstriction, which is going to raise blood pressure. At the same time, you're going to trigger the production of aldosterone, which is going to pull back salt, which is going to pull back water. You raise your blood volume. Meanwhile, the sympathetic nervous system is going to notice this as well, trigger this. Also have vasoconstriction happen. This whole system is also going to be noticed by the endocrine system as a whole. There are, they're called osmoreceptors. They feel the concentration of solutes in blood in the brain, and they're going to signal a whole bunch of things. You're going to make antidiuretic hormone, right? You're like, whoa, blood pressure is low. I need to make more of this. So you pull back water. If your If your blood pressure is high, you're not doing these kind of things. Your body isn't so worried about making antidiuretic hormone because, sure, get rid of it. Fair enough? Cool. Okay, so we kept electrolytes balanced. We now have acid base next. Yes, acid base next. Your blood has got to be 7.4. Like, it can go a little bit either direction, but like really, really needs to stay right there around neutral. Alkalosis, where you get too basic, and acidosis, where you get too acidic, are both problems. Kidneys do this. They're great. Kidneys keep things set. Acid base is controlled by other systems in the body. Hasn't been taken today's exam yet. It comes up something about the respiratory system and carbon dioxide. Remind me, is carbon dioxide acidic or basic? Acidic, yeah. Okay, yeah, you'll do great on this exam. Your body's desperate to control its acid-base balance, right? The first line of defense it has are the buffers, right? So you dump acid in your body has physiological buffers that just can, like, take it and keep you normal. You take a bunch of base in your body, the buffers can just instantly respawn. If you go beyond what the buffers can do, though, now you have too much acid or base. It's a problem. Buffers are super fast, but they can only control a little bit. Respiration can also be fast, but not as fast as buffers. So respiration, you have too much acid in your body, you're going to breathe off more carbon dioxide. They actually, do you want a random side note? There's recently, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, they came out with a way to breathe off alcohol faster. Have you guys heard about this? So, like, if you've ever smelled somebody who's been drinking alcohol, you can smell some of their breath, right? Some alcohol comes back out as you breathe. But typically, most of the alcohol just, you have to, like, wait for your liver to, like, detoxify it and stuff, and it can be a problem if people got too much alcohol in them. So, theoretically, if you could just, you could breathe off a ton of alcohol. The problem is, if you do that, you, like, hyperventilate and can cause other problems, right? So, it's kind of cool. It's this, like, funnel valve system situation that they have, where they have people breathe, and it feeds their carbon dioxide back to them so they can breathe a lot and breathe alcohol off, but not, like, pass out. Anyways, that's not super relevant, except respiration is going to control this as well. That's why, like, if people have had, like, a panic attack, right, you'll sometimes have them breathe into a paper bag. Have you ever seen that? It's because if they're panicking, they're starting to breathe off too much too fast, right? So they can still keep doing that, but you basically are feeding carbon dioxide back into them to keep their acid-base balance okay. Fair enough? So respiration's good, buffers are fast, but for, like, long-term acid-base control, you need the kidneys. The kidneys keep this balance. The other ones are fast for in the moment. This is going to solve the problem. If blood pH rises, right, if things get basic, then you get rid of bicarbonate, right? You're like, well, I have too much base, I will just get rid of the base. And you'll keep the acid, so you'll keep hydrogen ions. So hydrogen ions are acidic, so your blood's too basic, you don't get rid of hydrogen ions, and you do get rid of bicarbonate. But if blood pH falls, you're like, what? I should keep the bicarbonate and get rid of hydrogen. Makes sense, right? Yeah. Any concerns in the last 5 minutes, 6 minutes, how many? Oh, good grief, like 5 minutes. Some problems that can happen with the urinary system. There can be certain problems like the acid-base balance. Those are more endocrine system things. Oh yeah, problems. It's not really a problem. The control of urination for like little kids, about 2. Urinary tract infections are really the only major problem people have before they're old. So like little kids have a problem with incontinence. Young adults don't typically have many urinary system problems at all. The system's fairly robust. You can have renal failure. If your kidneys, for whatever reason, they've gotten scarred, they've gotten somehow diseased, they just don't work as a kidney, that's a problem. So long as you have one functioning kidney, you should be able to filter your blood just fine. But if the kidney filtration fails, you're in trouble. This is why then you do something like dialysis. So like, I need this blood filtered some other way. The older you get, typically, the less good kidneys are at filtering stuff. So with age, there are a number of problems that actually happen. Wrong. There you go. Wrong. Is it? The problems that show up are these. So people feel like they have to pee, and if they don't, it's called urgency. Like I have to. No way, I didn't. Frequency is when you often just get rid of a little bit at a time. Nocturia, is where you have to get up in the night a bunch of times to urinate. Incontinence is when you can't control it. And then urinary retention is going to be more of a problem in males. If the prostate gland has some problems, it'll like squeeze in on things a little bit, so it'll be harder to completely clear the bladder.